Welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to continue our three-part series on hand planing. So today we're going to cover sharpening. Show you my tips and tricks and how I do it, from a very dull blade to just a touch-up on your blade. Remember last time we covered assembly and disassembly and some plane anatomy. So today sharpening, and then next time, future video, we're going to talk about fine-tuning and using your hand plane. So without further ado, let's get started. Before we get started, we'll talk about what you need. So you're going to need some basic equipment. First things first, you need a hand plane, because we need to sharpen that. Second thing, an old rag, pretty beat up. It's actually an old t-shirt. I like to put a rag down on my work surface to put my stone. So you're going to need something to sharpen with. This here is a oil stone, an old oil stone that I actually have boiled. So I converted it to a water stone. And the way you do that is you take an old oil stone, you put it in a pot of boiling water, you boil the oil out of it, and then you can use it with water instead. So just a handy little guide there. I prefer to use water just because it's less messy. I haven't seen any performance degradation on this stone. It's got a coarse side and a fine side, so it's worked fine for me. And to lubricate your surface, you're going to need some liquid here. Either alcohol or water is in this bottle. We'll see. Yep, that's some water. So you need some water for your stone. And I like to keep a rag handy, just to wipe things down, because after I get this stuff wet, it will rust. So use a clean rag, not a dirty rag, to go ahead and do your wipe down and clean up afterward. So I'll zoom you in a little bit closer and we'll go through how to use all this to sharpen. Okay, pretty basic setup with what I have. First step is, and you'll see this in the first video, taking this apart, lever cap off, blade assembly out, and remove the blade, the iron, as it's called. Okay. So I'm going to set all this stuff aside so we don't get it wet. What I'm going to do is you want to make sure this back is flattened. And if you can see that, this part here is a different color than the rest of it. This section and the rest all the way up came straight from the factory that way, it was ground that way. This section down here has been sharpened, so it looks a little bit different, and it's nice and flat. And that's the key. You want the back side of your iron to be flat. The bevel you want at this same angle all the way across, and you want it square. So I guess that's another tool that you'll need, is a square to check for square on your iron. Fairly dull. You can see I can run my finger across it and not cut myself. When it's sharpened, I won't do that because it will cut me. So we're going to start, since it's so dull, on the coarse. I said if you just need to touch up an iron or a blade, you can go ahead and just use the fine side to do a quick touch up. But for here, we'll start on the coarse side. Now, first thing you do is you get some water down to lubricate that up. You can use a squirt bottle too. I just find that it's nice to flood the surface like this. You can also soak these. I think with a traditional water stone, you're supposed to soak it. I don't soak this one. So, take your backside, put it straight down there, and you're just looking to do this edge here. So just keep it kind of like this, near the edge, and slide it back and forth. And keep the water underneath it. And I can feel a burr starting. And so a burr is when that edge of metal starts to kind of curl over the top. So it started to curl up, creating a little lip of metal. And that's what you're looking for, because you want it to be nice and flat, and that metal to start to come up, and then you're going to break off that little curve, and it's going to be a super fine razor sharp edge. So I'm going to go just a couple more strokes. All right, looks perfect. Okay, so now we have to do the bevel. And to do that, I like to put the iron straight down so it's flat, and then rock it up like this until it stops. So that's the key. We're rocking it up to stop at the exact angle that it's already ground at. Hold it right there, and then what I like to do is I like to hold it like this. You can see one finger down to apply pressure on one side. My other hand will apply pressure on the other side to keep it even. And then my wrist, I keep locked in at this nice angle. And then I curl my fingers around to really give it a firm grip, and also to make sure that I just keep that all locked in, nice in line with my wrist, so that I can maintain that angle every time I make a stroke on this. So again, put it down, rock it up, maintain your angle, and then come in here at the side and check to see, are you flat? It's important to keep it nice and flat on that bevel. If you don't feel comfortable doing this, start with a chisel. Starting with a chisel makes it easier because the bevel is so much bigger that you can feel for it a lot easier. So just a good beginner tip if you need it. Okay, now that my water's all gone away, let's go ahead and start. All right, and that's it. Now I just feel for a burr, and I feel it evenly all the way across, which tells me that I'm doing a good job. I'll look at this. The surface looks pretty good. You can see getting some shine to it. We might go just a little bit more. And another thing just about your stone, I'm only working this section partially because it's easier for me to work a small section on camera, but typically I'd want to really use the entire surface of the stone. That way you know you're wearing it nice and evenly all the way across. The best way. For a beginner, I'd suggest staying small because it's easier to maintain your angle in your wrist on a small section rather than going this whole long stroke. Okay, so once we are good, we have a bevel, or a burr on the bevel here. We want to go ahead and flip this guy over and use the fine side. I'm gonna give this a quick wipe. It's nice and clean. And we're going to follow the same process again. Little water. It's not going to soak in as much on this side because the pores are not as big in that stone. And then again, backside down, and concentrating on this edge, slide it back and forth. Here on this super fine side, you can even hear the difference. It's more of a sliding sound instead of a grinding sound. We're really just finely polishing the surface at this point. We're not grinding so much. Just like sanding. when you go from 80 grit to 120 grit to all the way up to 220, 240, you're erasing all of those marks that the old sandpaper left. We're doing the exact same thing here. We're erasing the marks from the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to feel for the burr. And I'm going to visually look to see how are my marks doing? How are my little lines from the last side of the stone looking? If they're still there, I'm going to keep going. And as far as wearing your stone evenly, after a little while, I'm going on one side. If you want to keep going on that edge, flip it around. And now let's work this side. Some more water on that side, put it down. Nice, shiny, even surface, and it's even all the way across, and that's the point, what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep it even from tip to tip, make it look the same all the way across there. If this area, you see how it dips down in there, if that dipped all the way to the edge, I'd want to keep going until that was gone. You can see here, it's good to go. So we'll flip it over and we'll do the other side. We'll do the bevel here. At this point, if you're worried about it, you can check for square. So just get your square, line it up on one side, and check to see how you're doing. Looking for any gaps between that blade and it'll be easier to see the other side and the square there. You can see this one's pretty darn good. So just a little positive reinforcement that we are continuing to grind at the right rate or at the right angle. Now a little more water. Okay, so now I'm going to feel for that burr again, and I'm going to feel all the way across to make sure that it's even. In that I feel it all the way across. If you're missing on any of that that iron, the length of it, then you know you need to keep going. You need to concentrate a little bit more on that part, potentially. So this feels good to me. It also looks nice and even as far as the shine and the marks on the entire surface like we checked on the back. So I'm ready to go ahead and break the burr and get rid of it. And the easiest way to do that is just to, since I've already pushed it over onto the backside, just take it and drag this backwards. You can even, what I like to do is I'll put a little bit of pressure as I drag backwards to lift this just ever so slightly. Some people will take a ruler and they'll put it on the surface here, like this. Take a ruler, put it here, and then drag backward like that to make sure you have a consistent angle as you're doing this. And so that's another good way to do it. I can feel now that I've pushed that burr over. And so what you're kind of doing here, it's kind of like when you take a wire and you bend that wire back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and eventually it snaps off. Well, that's what we're doing with this little piece of metal that's over the edge. We're bending it back and forth until it'll snap off. So do the same thing this way, a couple of times, flip it back over, do it this way, over, do it this way. Pretty much it. So the last step in sharpening, because this is already sharp, I won't run my finger along there anymore. I'll touch it, and I can tell you right now, that's pretty razor sharp. So what I like to do as my finishing step is actually clear my stone out of the way and just use my workbench surface here If you have a leather strop with polishing compound, you probably want to do that instead. I don't have that, so instead I use wood. You just want to use something soft, softer than that stone, to polish it up at the very end here. So, and make sure that burr is completely gone. So I just take it like I was just doing on that stone and do it on my workbench surface. And really all this is doing is just kind of lining everything up with that edge. Making sure that burr is gone and it is sharp. So to prove sharpness, because I'm sure you guys want to see, do a little paper test. If it can cut paper, it can cut wood. All right, so that there is the long version. And I know that took a while on camera to do, but I can do that process in 3 or 4, maybe 5 minutes at the most, depending on how bad this is, without having to explain it along the way. But if you want the quick version, I use this stone, which is just, well, it's not stone. It's a diamond plate. I don't know what the grit is on it. I bought this a long time ago for the kitchen knives, and that's primarily what I use it for. It's good size for that. It's a little small for doing these irons, but if I need to just touch something up, I'll use this little guy. And especially if, you know, I have a little plane that doesn't, you know, this is a small one in this block plane, but if it doesn't need a whole ton of fixing, a whole ton of sharpening, I just need to touch it up, trimming some end grain or something like that, so I don't get any tear out. I'll just smack it on this for a little bit. So same process applies here. Go ahead, put your water down, use the backside, or put the backside down.
While I'm busy sharpening, I'm going to use this time with a little God mode voiceover to explain something I'm going to talk about in a second. I'm making mention about sandpaper, and I don't say the reason why I don't like sandpaper is because sandpaper is expensive. I mean, it's kind of good sandpaper for what you want to sharpen an iron, sharpen a chisel, is expensive. So these stones, I mentioned it, they last for a really long time, but also they're not that expensive. I bought one for my brother about a year ago for $40 at Woodcraft. So go for stones. They'll last 100 times longer than your sandpaper will. Back to the sharpening process here. By the way, we're 1 minute in, and I've already done the backside onto the bevel. I say it takes about 2 minutes. It takes exactly 2 minutes to sharpen this thing.
There we go. That's it. What did that take? Maybe 2 minutes. A quick one of these. Quick one of these. Whoops. See how sharp that was? And that's it. So nice and sharp, ready for use. Give it a wipe down, put it back in plane, and 2 minutes, you're ready to go to cut whatever you want with that. So there you have it. How to sharpen. It's not very hard. Doesn't take many tools. Honestly, before I got this is all I had, and this works just fine. Does it take a little bit longer since it doesn't have a coarse side? Yes, of course. Do you need anything else? No. Do you need sandpaper on a sheet of glass or a piece of marble or whatever? No, you don't. I suggest going with a stone because I think it's just easier to maintain, to clean, to keep around. They last for a very, very long time, forever. I mean, look at how thick that thing is. That's how much you can wear this thing down and still have it usable. My dad has my great-grandfather's stone that he's been using for a long time and has been around for a long time, probably over 100-year-old, probably even older than that, 150-year-old stuff. With that, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave me a comment, let me know your tips on sharpening, and we'll see you next time on the next one where we do the fine tuning and how to use. That's the fun one. This last two have just been all preparation to lead up to that point to actually get you working with some wood. So, bye-bye.